1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Yes, you heard that correct. This is mechanical rim brake 105 running 12 speed. How it's possible, you may ask? Well, that's not something Shimano's going to be overly pleased about.
A few years ago, when Shimano moved to 12 speed, mainstream mechanical rim brake shifting basically died. If you want disc brakes, there's still some mechanical options out there for you, but if you're like me and you still love a good old school rim brake frame, well, you're stuck with 11 speed. Or at least that's what Shimano wants you to think. 11 speed 105 R7000 pretty much is one of the greatest group sets ever made. It's super cheap, super reliable, and also isn't particularly heavy either. However, there's one thing it crucially isn't, and that is 12 speed, which, love it or hate it, seems to be the way the industry is going right now. And that's where Chinese brand Sensah enters the conversation with these Team Pro shifters. And in theory, they are supposed to take the pull ratio of 11 speed Shimano rear derailleurs and make them compatible with a 12 speed cassette. Now, I have no clue if this is going to work. I've literally just received the box in a post and I'm about to throw it onto my trusty CAD 13, which has basically become my rim brake test bed for now. And we're going to see, can this really turn an old 11 speed 105 group set into an up-to-date 12 speed mechanical rim brake setup? Let's find out. But of course, it wouldn't be one of my videos without getting the shifters on the scales before we throw them on the bike and seeing how they compare with the old 105 shifters. So on the scales then, the 105 shifters are clocking in at 486.5 grams compared to the Sensah shifters, which are clocking in at 433.4 grams. So a fairly significant saving versus 105. I think most of that will come down to the fact that the Sensah Team Pro use a carbon blade, and it is also more SRAM style double tap shifting where it's all in one blade rather than a blade that moves and a paddle on the Shimano. So it's a far simpler mechanism all inside. But yeah, from initial sort of first impressions of the fit and finish and feel of the shifters, they do feel really quite good. And to be honest with you, I think they actually feel more premium than the Shimano offering, with the rubber definitely being pretty much on par. Way better than the rubber L2 use on their shifters. So yeah, I think it's about time to throw this on the bike and see just how well it performs. First job, let's get these shifters on the bike and see how it looks. Shifters on, now it's time to get it all cabled in with the mechs. So what parts are staying stock on the build then? As you can see, pretty much everything here is just stock Shimano. We've got a 105 R7000 rear mech. We've got a Shimano Ultegra R8000 chain set. Yes, 11 speed chain sets are absolutely fine with 12 speed. In fact, in the early days of 12 speed, a lot of pros were still using their 11 speed chain sets because there were issues with the 12 speed ones dropping chains. We've also got a 105 front mech, and moving away from 11 speed, we've got a 12 speed R7100 cassette in 11 to 34. And also we're staying with 12 speed with the chain, as that is a 6100, I think technically Dior chain, pretty much the cheapest 12 speed chain Shimano makes. I did for a bit of fun try an 11 speed chain to see whether that was a myth that wouldn't work, but no. 11 speed chains are definitely incompatible with 12 speed, at least with Shimano. It's just too narrow on the block at the back for the shifting to work properly. Pivoting round to the front end of the bike, you can see I've now got the Sensah Team Pro shifters installed and ready to ride. So yeah, all that's left is I get kitted up and get out on a test ride and see just how well this shifting actually works. So now I've been riding these Sensah shifters for a while now. I'm ready to talk performance, and I have to say, off the bat, I have been really impressed with just how good shifting performance is. The shifting is super crisp and tactile, and the indexing is bang on. It doesn't miss a shift. I've not had any issues with gears clicking or jittering. You know, every shift is pretty much worked perfectly. The only slight issue I had was down to user error. I didn't quite get the upper limit screw dialed in perfectly on the front mech, so I did throw my chain over the top a few times on the first ride. However, that's all set up now properly. Ergonomically then, these Team Pro shifters are pretty much exactly the same as a stock rim brake 11-speed Shimano shifter, like this 105 one here. And you'll find that the profiling is pretty much identical. I would say the Team Pro ones are slightly thinner, which I think quite a lot of people might prefer. And the hood rubbers, unlike some of the other Chinese group sets I've tried, like the stuff made by L2, are actually really good and very supple and grippy. The L2 ones are quite firm and you have to proper wrestle them to get to like the mounting bolt. But these Sensah shifters, yeah, they're far more premium feeling and a lot closer to the sort of rubber that Shimano uses on their hoods. The braking feel you get from these levers is pretty much perfectly on par with Shimano as well. So if you've ever used rim brake Shimano shifters, you'll know what the lever actuation feels like. Yes, I've got rather big hands, so my experience may be slightly different than someone with smaller hands, but I find them really comfortable. And I have to say, the Shimano rim brake style shifter is probably one of my favorite shifter hood designs of all time. But as I said before, not everything about these shifters has been perfect. There are a couple of little things that I would have liked to see Sensah improve on. Now, the first one is not really something of their design, but of the design they've kind of copied. When they design their shifters, I think pretty much across their entire range, despite being designed to work with Shimano mechs, they use the SRAM double tap style shifting system, where you go one click to shift into a smaller sprocket, or you double click it to shift into a larger. The advantage of this is it only needs one lever blade to move. However, I am still not convinced by this system. Despite running it on bikes since 2013 on my very first cyclocross bike, I've had so much time riding double tap and I've still just never quite got my head around using it versus Shimano. When you're absolutely redline pushing 190 BPM, doing a full-on VO2 max effort, I still mess up shifting. And now probably part of that comes from the fact I'm constantly shifting group sets at the minute, but it's just not as intuitive to use as Shimano. And there are some other little drawbacks that come from it as well. Specifically, with these shifters, I often find as you go to shift, you can sometimes, especially with the front mech, accidentally actuate the brake ever so slightly, especially when I was in the work stand actually, as it is the full shifter that throws across. Unlike on SRAM, where it's a little paddle underneath the shifter. Out riding in the real world, I didn't find I was doing it very much, and I very quickly trained myself not to do it. But, you know, it's just not as good a design as the classic paddle and lever shift with Shimano, or even the Campag, now copied by L2 style, that uses a thumb shifter and a paddle. But yeah, at the end of the day, the fact that I can use 12 speed on my rim brake bike is super cool. So let's talk value then. And I think there's two main arcs to the value proposition of this shifter system. The first one is if you're trying to build up a super budget 12 speed bike and you don't want to go the full Chinese route. And I actually think this is the key sort of USP of these shifters. What you can do is you can grab a set of these shifters, which I think when you use a discount code like mine on AliExpress, they can come down to about 50 quid when they're on sale, and combine it with some genuine Shimano mechs, which when you look on sites like Merlin Cycles, you can get a pair of front and rear 105 mechs for about 50 quid in total. And you've got a full shifter and mech system for under 100 quid. With some clever eBay and AliExpress shopping, I reckon then you could build out a full half Shimano, half Sensah 105/Ultegra level group set for less than 200 quid now, which, you know, if you've got an old rim brake bike with, you know, maybe 10 speed Shimano, which you want to upgrade and get a modern group set on, I'd say that is a really awesome upgrade, especially for the price. But where I think the value proposition isn't as strong is, let's say, I mean, like me with this bike, I was running a 11 speed sort of 105/Ultegra hybrid, as you could see. And obviously I've done this to test these shifters for YouTube, but I really do not see the point in upgrading my 105 shifters to these Sensah ones. Yes, getting a carbon blade is nice, you know, your hands don't get as cold on a cold winter's day as with a metal lever, but does 12 speed really matter? For training, I cannot see the point in spending a load of money because realistically, getting these shifters, 50 quid, needed a new cassette. Now I bought a second-hand one and got lucky on a gamble on eBay and got it for about 20 quid, plus a chain, which was another tenner. You know, you're talking nearly 100 quid to do this upgrade for one tiny extra sprocket, which, to be honest with you, I couldn't even tell the difference. If you blindfolded me and not told me whether this is an 11 or a 12-speed bike, well, actually, don't blindfold me because I'm probably going to crash. But yeah, let's say you don't let me count the ratios on the rear and I don't know whether it's 11 or 12 speed. You know, even in a race scenario, could I tell the difference? Unless I'm like hyper-focused counting the shifts, I really don't think it makes that much difference with the sort of ratios you're running on road. I think the one place where 12 speed really does have a purpose is on something like gravel or mountain bike, where you have these massive 10 to 52 tooth rear cassettes where, you know, especially towards the top end, then ratios are getting huge. But yeah, as I said, on road, I think you're wasting your money really chasing 12 speed over 11. So my final sort of verdict and conclusion on these shifters. First up, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. If you've got a fully working 11 speed group set, honestly, there's no point going out and upgrading to this. But do I think it is an awesome product? Well, yeah, I think Sensah have absolutely killed it with this one. And I think they've gone the complete right direction, making it compatible with stock Shimano mechs, as it just opens up so many more doors. And this is the sort of AliExpress product I absolutely love. Things that are real world problem solvers, that aren't just a cheap knockoff of a mainstream component you can buy. Actually, these offer something that Shimano and SRAM don't offer themselves. You know, Shimano and SRAM are so keen to lock you down to you buy 11 speed generation, you buy 12 speed generation, and when they've obsoleted it, that's it. Your parts are ready to go in the bin or get recycled onto an old bike. Especially, I mean, currently 11 speed Shimano stuff is widely available on the market, but you know, in 5 years' time, will you still be able to buy it? Who knows? But you'll have to let me know, what do you think of these Sensah shifters? And in your opinion, is 12 speed actually worth it as an upgrade on 11? So yeah, I hope you've really enjoyed today's video. If you're interested in checking out a set of these Sensah shifters, I'm going to leave them linked in the description below, along with all my AliExpress discount codes. Also, please do get yourself subscribed. I really want to hit that 10,000 subscriber mark as soon as possible. So every one of you that click subscribe are doing me a massive favor. I can see that still nearly 80% of you are not subscribed. So please consider clicking subscribe down below. And if you want to support the channel even further, well, consider joining channel membership, where you get early access to more videos like this, and you get to vote in my monthly AliExpress poll, where you get to choose what product I review next. The March poll has some really exciting options in it. But I'm going to leave it there for today, and until the next video, I'll see you all soon.